Sales advice often feels like a motivational drill. Push harder, close faster, dominate the deal. But what if the real edge comes from stepping back, reading the field, and letting strategy, not force, do the work? Let's have ourselves a pocket sized pep talk and dig into why winning in sales, just like on the battlefield or in the digital arena, starts with planning, positioning, and knowing exactly when not to charge.
A Pocket Sized Pep Talk, the podcast that can help energize your business and your life with a quick, inspiring message. Now, here's your host, Rob Jollis.
Today's guest, John Golden, is an Amazon best-selling author of Winning the Battle for Sales, Lessons on Closing Every Deal from the World's Greatest Military Victories, and Social Upheaval, How to Win at Social Selling. A globally acknowledged sales and marketing thought leader, speaker, and strategist, he's conducted over 1,500 video interviews of thought leaders for Sales Pop, online sales magazine, and YouTube channel for audio podcast channels, where Sales Pop is rated in the top 2% most popular shows out of over 3 million podcasts. He's the CSMO at Pipeliner CRM, and in his spare time, John's an avid martial artist, and I actually looked this up. I can't even pronounce two of the three types of martial arts you practice. What are they called?
Oh, Taekwondo, Hapkido. I do a little bit of boxing, do some Gumdo as well with swords and nunchucks and all that good stuff.
And that's why we treat John with care and respect. Good to have you on the show and welcome aboard. Thanks, you bet. And I will tell you, that Sales Pop show is terrific. I've been on it, I think, at least twice.
Oh, at least twice, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you've been on a panel discussion too. So I think you've probably had it at least three times. Mm-hmm.
Right. John and I go back a ways, and that's why I started looking at you. It's funny, you think you know somebody. And then I looked at your LinkedIn site. I noticed you were president and CEO of Huthwiate some years ago. Do I have that right?
Correct. Yes, indeed.
Well, no wonder we get along, because you know that at Xerox, of course, we use spin selling from Huthwiate. Yeah, so, that was a company that most Xeroids were connected to and respected. Did you get to know the man himself?
Oh, Mr. Rackham, indeed. Yeah. I did. I spent quite a lot of time with him. I used to, he's his own person now. Like he sold Huthwiate and that, but he still speaks and he still does some writing. And I used to, when I was running Huthwiate and living in Virginia, we were based in Northern Virginia, in Arlington. He's out in the western part of Virginia. He's got his house, and then down from his house, he's got this beautiful, what he calls his writing cottage, and it's by the river. Sometimes he even kayaks down to it from his house.
Wow. And
that's where he does his writing. So I used to go out and spend some time with him, brainstorming and strategizing. And indeed, I actually brought him on a couple of sales calls at different times when I felt his presence would add something. And so great man, fascinating man, very interesting person, very thoughtful, and still has his finger on the pulse.
Yeah. And just to catch everybody up, we're talking about Neil Rackham. And for me, just a very inspirational person. I had learned to sell at New York Life, but I really learned, a couple canned pitches, lived, I quit story. I could act out those pitches, but Rackham was the first person that ever taught me a process. And we're talking about spin selling from the late 70s, that a British scientist of all people, not your classic salesperson, but that's the interesting thing about that book, was that when a scientist writes a book, they'd have no skin in the game. It's like, look, you can believe me or not believe me. I'm just showing you what the data is presenting. And that's
it's the only empirical research done on sales ever, really, of that magnitude. I mean, some people have done other stuff, but nothing on that level. And so, the great thing about it was that what came out of it was scientific insight, not gut feeling. And let's face it, a lot of sales methodologies were based on this is what made me successful. Therefore, if I codify it, and other people use it, they'll be just as successful, which isn't always the case. This was based on here's what the best salespeople actually do in reality.
Yeah, that captures it. I think it's Brian Tracy and Neil Rackham for me,
Mhm.
both very process driven people. And of course, I came from a company that was process driven, so it fit in. All right, enough
And
about
by the
Neil.
way,
Let's,
I've
yeah.
had the pleasure of spending a little time with Brian Tracy some years back as well.
Uh,
Another super guy, very helpful, generous person.
yeah. He's actually written a foreword to one of my books and has been very generous with me as well. All right, but let's talk about you. Okay. Pipeliner. You've had a hand in shaping Pipeliner. You've been there for about 11 years now.
Mhm.
What are some of the changes that you've noticed in the 11 years that you've been there, just in terms of sales strategy and direction?
I think one of the fundamental ones, to be honest, Rob, which won't surprise you in the slightest, is the more things change, the more things stay the same. And it comes with sales. Is It's amazing today that still there's a lot of fundamental sales skills that either aren't taught or have been forgotten, and also we still treat, I mean, this amazing thing. A lot of society, corporation, whatever, still treat salespeople, I think, poorly, and consider them. And so, have you ever heard people go, "Oh, don't call me a salesperson," or like, "Oh my God, I would never be a salesperson," or "You're a salesperson," and it's terrible, because they're so fundamental to society and to every company needs salespeople in order to generate revenue. And salespeople at the end of the day are just problem solvers. That's what they are. It's a wonderful role. So what I've seen change over the years is that when we at Pipeliner took a salesperson first approach, as opposed to a leadership first approach. And most of the products in the legacy CRMs that were built from command and control perspectives, and it was like, oh, here's all the things, here's all the information I could get, here's all the visibility, I could see all of this, fantastic. And so the products were built, and what left out of the equation was the poor salesperson who was at the other end going, hang on a second, now you want me to be a data entry person? To be honest, back in the day, if I had $1 for every salesperson who said to me, when I said, why isn't this in the CRM? And they would say, well, do you want me to do data entry or do you want me to sell? And I'd say, well, ideally both. And say, well, I've only got so many hours in the day. And to be honest, they were right. They were right, because the systems put a lot of burden on them, but gave them really little to nothing in return. So we flipped the script on that and said, okay, if you're going to have a CRM system, if you can make it so that it's adoptable, so that people want to use it, salespeople want to use it, it gives them something, it provides them insights, it provides them guidance, then they will use it. There, ergo, management and executives will get what they want because it'll be based off real data as opposed to having to chase it up all the time. So that's been, for me, that's been the really fundamental and enduring part, has been when you really look at salespeople and you take a salesperson first approach, things change, and also it starts to elevate the role of the salesperson in the way that it should be.
Yeah. You know, well, first of all, I got to go back to your point about people not wanting to be called salespeople, et cetera. I show in some of my seminars, I downloaded this commercial from Capital One Bank. Capital One Bank, that's my bank.
Right.
Uh, and they're one of the first commercials said, right in the middle, we're here to help you, not sell you. And I'm glad you're laughing. I found it incredibly insulting. Uh, Quite frankly, look, they're my bank. I'm not beating them up, but I don't ever go to a bank that's there to not sell you,
Yeah.
because what they're really saying is, we know you have fear of change. We know you have some issues here, but we don't want to get in the way. We want to make a smoothie for you. Uh, that's exactly why we do need salespeople,
Yeah.
because left to our on our own, we're going to wait for that problem to become massive in size when it's way too late and too large to fix anyway. That's
And
why
I think,
salespeople are so valuable.
yeah, and I think the other part of that equation too, Rob, is, as you mentioned, back when I was running Huthwiate, so we were doing global sales consultancy, big, huge companies across the world, large and small. Um, And sometimes you go into a company and they would say, "Oh yeah, we need to customize the program because we don't call our salespeople. We call them whatever stupid name
Yes.
they come up with, right?" And I would always say, "Yeah, fine. I mean, we can do anything." I said, "But just consider this: your prospects and customers know that your salespeople are salespeople. Whatever you want to call them, they know that they're salespeople. You're not fooling anybody, and that's okay if you think that works for you. But just know at the end of the day, you're not fooling anybody. When they get a call, they know it's a salesperson, and you can either embrace that or you can hide from it."
Yeah, I hear you, and I do. I find it funny. It really is, but that's an issue we have to solve with our sales force as well, because sometimes they see themselves as
Yeah, yeah.
So there's some ethics issues we could cover, but I wanted to hit on one other thing. The When you've got the CRM, the argument that I always heard, besides data entry,
Hmm.
was I feel like Big Brother's watching. Uh, how do you walk around that? How do you work around that?
Yeah, I think the way we do it is, we follow a lot of the principles of the Austrian School of Economics, and one of those is personal accountability, right? So, I think when with our CRM, we give the person or the user all the tools that they could possibly need, right? So we don't restrict them. Say this is manager only tools. We say have them all. Now, obviously, it's restricted what you can see, because at the end of the day, we say as a salesperson, you're like the entrepreneur in any organization. You're the only person who is either a lot or all of your compensation is variable. The accountant down the hall knows exactly what he's getting paid this month, he or she, right? You don't. Therefore, you have to be more creative. Therefore, we give you all the tools to manage your book of business like a business. And I think once you flip the switch on that and you say, okay, I'm now using this and using these tools to manage my book of business, to stay on top of things, to really be prepared and everything. Why would you care at that point? Why would you care? In fact, you would want your leaders to see what you're doing, to see how you're executing. And I think you just have to flip the switch on that, is that it's not about command and control. It's about empowering you and giving you all the tools you can to be successful. But with any empowerment comes the accountability of you to use it and to use it ethically and to use it to the best. So I think once you flip the switch and you bring that equation in, that it's we give you everything, we empower you, but with greater freedoms come greater responsibilities.
Yeah, I hear you, and I agree with you. I think, listen, there's always pros and cons. I think there's a whole lot more working for us, and
Sure.
quite frankly, if we're out there doing what we're supposed to do, you're right. Maybe it's just validating
Hmm.
the process we're following, because you can do everything right and not get a sale.
Yeah.
We both learned that many a time over.
Yeah.
But I don't know about you. I really I live to fight another day when I can see that I've done everything that I really wanted to do. In other words, I played this the right way. I hit that golf ball and played that hole the right way. It didn't go in, but I'd play it again the same way, just like that. That's how we live to fight another day. So if that's the way we're operating,
And
um,
to be
yeah,
honest, if your leadership is using the CRM as a stick to beat people with, well, that's a leadership issue as well. Because as you know, I mean, especially in sales, like sales leaders should be coaching. They should be looking to help people make sure they've got the right opportunities in their pipeline. They shouldn't be just coming down saying, "Well, you did this wrong. You did here, get out of the way. Let me close this deal for you."
yeah, yeah. All right, let's jump onto your books a little bit. In winning the battle for sales, you're drawing on some lessons from some major military victories.
Hmm.
I,
And some
I love I
obscure
love
ones.
this question, by the way. I ask it about once out of every four shows, because when I see something like this, I go, I don't think an acorn hit John on the head. Something drew him to this. So, how did this particular book find you? I'm not going to ask how you found it. How did it find you?
Well, I've always, I actually, my undergrad degree was in history, right? So I
Mhm.
studied a lot of history, back in Dublin and Ireland. We have a rich history, so we tend to be, and it's quite it has a lot of rebellions and risings and a lot of fighting in it too. So it's kind of something. So I've always been interested in that in history and in geopolitics and all that kind of good stuff. But how it found me was I was when I was at Huthwiate, I was writing a blog post, right? And somebody had said to me, "What is your advice to a salesperson who's in a rut, right? Who, the deals aren't closing, everything is going wrong, And so I thought about it, and I did a little bit of reading, and then I came across the George Washington and across the Delaware, right? So the American Revolution. So they were camped out. Everything was going wrong. The revolution was on the verge of collapse. A lot of the troops that Washington had in his camp were actually on a contract, right? So they had said, "I'll sign up for a year." For coming to an end, they were ready to go back. There was a lot of guys who were sick or ill, and basically people were sort of quietly saying, "This is over." And so Washington then decided, okay, we need a quick victory. We need something to rally around. So they did that crossing of the Delaware I mean, it must have been horrendous in open boats at that time of the year if you've ever been up
Yeah.
in that neck of the woods, and they crossed and they surprised attacked the Hessian mercenaries who the British were using there, and they won a victory, right? And and that turned the war, right? Because that gave people something to rally around. And so, yeah, so I wrote that blog post, and then I started discussing it with somebody who worked with me, and uh, we contacted McGraw Hill, who had published like Spin Selling, and said, "Would you be interested in something a little bit different here? We're going to find military and events from history, and we're going to attach a sales lesson to it. So it kind of a way of recall, right? So when you're in a situation, you go, oh yeah, I remember this. I remember that battle or whatever. This is what I should do. So, and they said, yeah, great idea. So let's do it. So then we had this fun time of going and finding different battles, different incidences, everything, and some of them are very good matches. Some of them are a little tenuous, but that's okay because the point was not to teach military history. The point was to teach sales lessons and make them easy to recall. So that's kind of how it all came about. It literally came off a blog post.
Yeah. I love the example you used because I just wrote a piece a couple weeks ago about, I called emotional momentum.
Hmm.
It's not physical, it's emotional.
Yeah,
And I think, and you can correct me, you're the expert on this, but wasn't the battle at Midway in World War II sort of similar of
yeah, it
we
was a similar
really,
thing.
we just were losing left and right. And it was a very symbolic victory
Yeah,
that really began to kind of create this change in the
yeah.
way we approach that war.
And I think no, 100%, and that's another great example. And I think this is when it becomes, like I said, it's really hard for salespeople because they have that variable compensation component, and so they're always living they're always living with a lot of uncertainty that other people, in other roles don't have. And when you get a few defeats, right? You get a few no's in a row, especially maybe you get one that you were almost like so certain about, and it can really knock you back and knock your confidence back. And I think at a time like that, what you need to do is you need to, number one is look back a little, remind yourself that, hey, I am good, I'm successful, look at all this track record. And then the second thing I would advise people is go back and look at what you were doing when you were successful, because one of the things that happens, and it happens to experienced people as much, if not more, is that once you've been doing something for a while, you start to go, I don't need to do that bit. I don't need to do that bit. I don't need to do that bit. And suddenly you're taking shortcuts. And when you go back and then maybe you look and you say, well, I'm not doing the prep work I used to do. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing that. And you go back and you revisit the fundamentals. It's amazing how that can help turn things around. And then you just need to go all in on finding some deal and finding some way of closing a deal. It's like, I mean, the other example I always use is if you follow what you call here in the States soccer, but I shall refer to as
You said that
football.
with an annoyed expression on
Yeah,
your
I
face.
did.
I
I
keep
did.
going. I have
With
to
disdain.
translate to those who are listening. You didn't look happy with that, but go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, but it's like when you have somebody who's the center forward, the striker, the goal scorer, and they're in a drought, right? They're everything's going wrong for them, nothing's going in. It's you'll often find the good ones will just keep putting themselves in those positions or whatever. Will keep making the run, will keep doing everything, and eventually maybe the ball hits off their their shoulder and goes into the goal, and suddenly they'll just go on a scoring spree.
Right.
And so it doesn't matter how that deal comes about, whether it's big, small, or whatever. As you said, emotional momentum, that's all you need. But
Yeah.
oftentimes to do that is you have to go back and ask yourself honestly, am I doing everything I could possibly do in order to succeed? Or am I starting to take shortcuts? Or did I kind of overlook this? Did I kind of have my happy years on and I heard something that wasn't really said?
Yeah. Well, I tend to agree with that. I think that's really what separates salespeople from most other jobs.
Hmm.
We lose a lot,
Yeah.
but we're able to handle those losses, and everybody has their own approach. I like your approach. It's something that I believe in myself, which is I've got to be process driven so I can measure what I'm doing so that when I'm done, rather than scratch my head, I can look, measure, and go, well, you know what? I played that the way I should have.
Yeah.
I can accept that. I don't know about you, but as an athlete and as a coach and as a salesperson, when I lose and I think, well, I took a shortcut here or I didn't
Mhm.
follow my process there, that keeps me up at night. That's the one we don't want.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with that. If you can look at it and say, I did everything I possibly could, I did all the steps, I, exhausted all the possibilities and I lost. So, well, yeah, you win some, you lose some. But if you look back, you like even that sports analogy, if you look back and think, there was 30 seconds left. And to be honest, I was just waiting for the buzzer. I had given, I didn't really put the effort in at the end that I should have.
Right. Right. All right, let's swing over to your social upheaval, How to Win at Social Selling. When did that book come out?
That book came out about 2 years after the other one, so
Okay.
it's a number of years ago now. And I think today, I mean, it would probably just be called selling.
Okay.
To read it simply,
Well,
because the social
yeah.
element. But I still think is people still don't understand the concept of online brand and social selling online and how you present yourself and how you go about it. A lot of people have just adopted say like LinkedIn. You remember LinkedIn used to be a great, and we still all use it today, but during COVID it just turned into a spam platform, right? Where people just spam you all the time. And I've always preached that whatever you do online, you should be authentic and real about it, and you should be it should be personalized. And yet people have taken that and they'll send you a connection request, Rob, where they'll go, oh, Rob, I've looked at your such a great guy, you do this, you do that, I'd be an honor to have you in my network. And you go, okay, well, this guy's taking some time, blah blah blah, and you accept the connection. Then you go, boom, that auto email pops up
Ugh,
immediately that
six
goes, here,
paragraphs. Yeah.
yeah, let me tell you, here's what I do, here, blah, 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 let me tell you this and everything. And then you're just going, okay, you just completely, you started off on the right foot, and now you're completely gone. Now you're
Right.
gone. Now I've probably disconnected you or sent you or I'll ignore you forever, because you broke a fundamental rule in that you reached out cold. You showed me that you'd taken an interest in understanding who I was. So you tried to establish a bit of trust, and then you broke that trust in the next step, rather than build on that,
Right.
and look at it as this is, if I'm going to connect and maybe, maybe one day Rob and I will do business together, I have to look at that as a long-term project, not a short-term one, not a like one of those like, let me just fire this pitch at you, and if you accept it, great, and if not, I'll just move on. And that's what's never changed. And I think even back from the book, that's what it says, is like if you're going to do these things, you should do them authentically, you should do them properly, and you should play the long game.
Right. And you need a second edition on the book. That's all.
Yeah.
That's it's always a good move. I'm learning that now, John. I've got a guy, and I'm supposed to be the sales genius. He's teaching me because we're working with something called a lead magnet. I'm sure you've heard of that. So we're
Sure.
going to give away this free book that I've
Hmm.
got. And I wanted to, my next email did not want to do what you were just describing,
Yeah.
but I wanted to get at it. Okay. And he said, and we've crafted, I believe, 7 emails.
Hmm.
Okay. Over a couple month period of time to ease our approach in to the ask or the want or whatever it is. And I looked at it, I said, you got to be kidding me. We when are we selling? We're selling.
Yeah.
We got to go easy. And
Mhm.
so now I'm looking at the series of emails from that lead and thinking it's actually brilliant, but it's stopping my instinct to say, well, what are we waiting for? Let's
Right.
go.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I mean, I would agree with you. And I think that's, it's what's happened now with attention spans, with the amount of garbage people are getting in. Is that I've heard recently, like they used to say, what is it, 8 to 12 touches or whatever. Now I'm hearing like 15 to 20. Some people are even up to 30,
Hmm.
whatever. It's nuts. But I think it's a byproduct of the fact is that we are bombarded, we're very distracted, and the chances of you maybe getting into a nurture campaign like that and me actually opening every single one in sequence is probably not going to happen. But I may open various ones during that thread, or one may resonate with me much more than the others, so I'm going to take a little bit more interest. Maybe some of them I just open and then I scroll on, and therefore you have to take that long tail approach because you don't know what's going to resonate. You don't know the timing when it's going to arrive. You don't know what frame of mind the person is in. And therefore it's like that one where people think, if I call you about something that's really great and it's a fantastic offer, I'm not taking into account that maybe this is like the last thing on your mind. Maybe there's other things on your mind. So the idea of giving people time and allowing them to, for at the right moment, the right message to resonate. I think that is an approach that works, and I think it works for how people are now. Because I would say, Rob, you have to meet people where they are, right? And that's just the reality of it. Like today, people are bombarded and distracted, and that's where they are. So you have to give them multiple different opportunities and sometimes multiple different ways of learning about you.
Yeah. Well, you even write it. You talk about aligning with target buyers.
Hmm.
What are some of the mistakes that companies make when they're trying to kind of reach that ideal buyer? Is it I want to be everything to everybody? Or that's one of mine. I'm sorry
Yeah.
about that. I hate asking a question and answering it. So, oops,
Yeah.
sorry. Let's take that one off the shelf. But give me one back of some of the mistakes that people make. Maybe one of the biggest ones in your mind.
Yeah, well, the first one is the one that like everybody's my customer, right?
Right.
I mean,
Right.
that is obviously the biggest one because like I don't think there's a product in the world that could really say that at the end of the day. Because everybody has, there's different variables. So I think the more granular you can get in your target buyer, the better. And I think if you go back and look at your recent history of sales and look at who your profile of target buyer and start to find the commonalities between them, you can build and it doesn't have to be one target buyer. It can be, multiple target buyers. But the better you define them, the more you're able to then just find out where are they. Like I said, meet people where they are. Where are they? Maybe if you're selling something, some cool new device or everything, maybe your customer base is on TikTok. I don't know. Maybe that's where they are, or Instagram or something. Maybe they're not in the other channels. If you're doing something like that, if you're trying to sell the consumer product on LinkedIn, you're in the wrong place, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's the first thing: is the more granular you can get, the better. It then allows you to be more selective of finding where those people are and actually being able to target. So it saves you money and focus in the long run. And it's actually, people think, well, if I shrink down my target audience to this, this is really risky. And you think, well, no, look at it the other way. If you have a broad target audience, then where do you spend your money? You have to spread it thinly across them. Where do you spend your focus? You've got to spread it thinly across them. But if you go down and focus at a granular level, now you can say, okay, this target buyer, this is where they hang out, these two places, this is their interest, this is the best time to reach, and this is how they like to interact. This is so you can build up a whole better profile. Then it's better use of your time, you're more focused, and it's better use of your dollars.
Right. Right. Good point. All right. We're coming down the home stretch. Let's talk about sales pop.
Yes.
And kudos to you. I didn't know how to spell podcast till I met you. How long you been? First, how long have you been at that? It's been a while. Seems.
Yeah, it's been about since about 2018, I think, is when we started Sales Pop and with our small team with Claudia and Jocelyn, Milos and Martha and that who've and I tell you, Rob, the most amazing thing about it has been number one, you get to meet fascinating people like yourself, and and I get to bring lots of different insights and stuff to our audience, and and now what's happened is just the accumulation of it. When we first started, we used to go hunting for this would be a good guess, this would be a good guess, right? Now we're at the stage where I mean we're just swamped by booking agents, by individuals, by people wanting to come on. And it's like in the last year and a half, it's like some switch flipped where people suddenly realize that going on podcasts is a good way of reaching an audience, reaching a new audience, like letting people know more about you as a person. People like that. Executives, I now see, marketing departments in companies are now telling their executives, you need to get on podcasts, and a lot of the executives again are saying, but pod what now?
Right.
What am I supposed to do? And and so yeah, it's been a phenomenal experience, and it's been such a learning experience. And so I always call myself just like a seeker of knowledge. I'm just a conduit. I go find people who are interesting that I think are interesting and have interesting messages, and then share those with the audience. And one of the things that we are working on right now, thanks to AI, is we are going to be integrating a lot of this content into the Pipeliner platform itself. So that, for instance, like if you were working on leads right now and you want some maybe a little bit of coaching around prospecting, you can search, have an agent that will be able to pull content for you from interviews and ebooks or whatever, and be able to serve you with some guidance on how to do that. So bridging the kind of bridging technology with real skills.
Yeah. Well, and you'll pull some Jala stuff out of that
Oh
as
yeah,
well. So
absolutely. And the nice thing is, if somebody goes, "Wow, this guy is really good. I really like what he does," then he contacts you. Everybody wins.
right, right. Well, congratulations, by the way, on getting that show into the top 2% nationally. That's a big get. I agree with you. I'm a guy that's been writing blogs for 16 years,
Wow,
and
do the blog thing.
yeah, hooray for me. But I tell you, you don't extend your network with a blog. You don't engage in a conversation like we're having with a blog. And so I'm still muscling out blogs just because my OCD-ish, as I call it, kicks in, and I just can't miss that deadline of a Friday.
Right.
But as a guy who's behind you on this podcast, I got bitten right at the end of 2019. Uh, I love it for the same reason you mentioned. I really like the challenge of just having this conversation and trying to find some information that's new and different. And I always hope the audience learns. I'm shocked how much I'm learning
Yeah.
frequently from my guests.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I no, 100%. I agree with you. That's the thing that fascinates me the most. Sometimes I come off a podcast interview and I just go, wow, that person was so interesting what they do. Like I wish I did. I'd love to do something like that. But it's really it's that when you get that from a guest, and a guest just makes you excited, and you come off and you just think, wow, I learned things I didn't know about there, and had insights, and it's just great to see that there are so many people in the world doing so many interesting things. And that's the thing, is it's global. We're not US centric. We have people from all over
yeah.
coming on it as well. And it's just fascinating to see what people are doing.
How many podcasts have you done now?
About over 1,600, probably heading towards 1,700,
1,600.
something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
How many a week do you do?
Sometimes like five or six, depending.
Then I'm really slapping your hands
Yeah.
because I'm going to let people know that, I've been on John's show a couple of times. So on my show, I went looking for his materials. John forgot to send me his
Yeah,
materials, John.
yeah, yeah.
Mr. 1600 over there. You should see him as a guest.
Yeah, no, I'm terrible. There you go. The worst prepared guest. But there's the other thing is actually it's a funny thing, Rob. Like people have reached out to me and asked about advice about starting a podcast and that. And there's a couple of pieces of advice I would give to people. Is number
Mhm.
one is don't start it unless you're prepared to do it for the long haul. Because I mean, I've had people come to me and said, "Oh, I did 20 episodes and I got no views and no nothing," and I'm like, "Yeah." You put out
Right.
20 episodes, nobody knows you. So were they good episodes? Did you learn anything from them? Did you ask the person to promote it? Did you do all these things? And and the other thing I say is unless you're actually curious by nature and you really want to learn from people, then don't do it. But if you're gonna get into it, like I said, do it for the long haul. Do it because you want to do it and then work on being good at it. And one of the best ways of doing that is actually go on other people's podcasts and put yourself in the shoes of a guest. Because it's amazing how many people started podcasts, and then I asked them, "Have you ever gone on someone else's podcast?" And they'll go, "Well, no." And I said, "Well, that's part of your problem. You're only seeing 50% of the picture."
Right, right. No, I was on hundreds of podcasts over the years till I took a dive in. You know what I get, John? I get well, why would I want to start a podcast? As you said, there's 3,320,580 podcasts. Why would I want to do that? And I'll answer my own that question for me.
Hmm.
It's the same reason why we write a book. There's tens of millions of books. Only most books don't sell more than 100 copies, 50 copies. Uh,
Exactly.
we call it pod fade in the podcast business. There's 3,320,000 and change podcasts, but many of them do what you described. 20 is a big number. The actual number, if you want to know, is seven.
Seven.
That's the average of when people quit podcasting. And for me, I'm not all that brokenhearted about it. It it,
Yeah.
it kind of gets them out of the way a little bit. So when we get a person like you who's got 1,600 podcasts in the neighborhood of, and my lowly 500, and I will catch you someday. Uh,
Yeah.
it's just keep grinding. That's what I would tell that friend of yours. Also, same thing,
Yeah.
but keep going. Just keep working it.
Yeah, and and to your point, and then you also ask yourself, okay, then if you're not happy with that, then what motivated you to do it in the first place, right? Because let's face it, if you, as you said, if you write a book, um, when you start to write a book, you're normally happy if this helps one or two people. If it's 10 people, whatever, if they get something out of it, then you've done your job. You've made the world a better place. You've shared some information, and hopefully it's made them successful. I mean, it's the same thing. If you reach some people and this makes an impact on them, then you're doing a wonderful thing. And why wouldn't you want to do that? And so if that's not your motivation, then if your motivation is to get vanity scores and stuff and to be able to go, oh, look at this, then either don't do it or pay a lot of money to some crappy service, and then eventually you'll get kicked off YouTube anyway.
That's pretty good advice. I can't call it great advice, but no, you're right. It's I like my numbers as well, but I've been at it for 5 years. But I'm with you. I like the conversations. I like staying engaged in my industry.
Yeah.
I like meeting. Tom Hopkins was a guy that when I was a 21-year-old insurance salesperson, that's one of the first sales books I ever read.
Right.
And to have him on the show was it was emotional for me. It's really wonderful. So okay, all right, Mr. Blogger, author, winning the battle for sales, lessons on closing every deal from the world's greatest military victories, and social upheaval, how to win social selling, and sales pop podcast, and I don't think you want to get into a street fight with the guy. It has been wonderful having you on. How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, the pipelinersales.com, salespop.net, LinkedIn, John Golden, easy to find. Sales Pop YouTube channel.
Yeah, he's all over the place.
Yeah,
He's not hard to
literally,
find.
yeah, in more ways than one.
Well, listen, it was nice. I appreciate you having me on your show, and I am grateful to have had you on my show. Really nice catching up with you, by the
Yeah,
way.
it is.
And I'm still amazed that you were that connected to Huthwiate, which is just a part of my history and past. It's probably why we get along so well. But really great seeing you again. Thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, listen, cheers, Rob. Thank you.
You bet. Well, we'll do it again as well as we can next time, everybody. Until then, stay safe.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please rate and recommend it on iTunes, Outcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get more information on this show and Rob at jollis.com.